Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishnaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine
Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine.
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Ashakya Deshatarine
Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine.
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda
Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare.
Jai Prabhupada Prabhupada Jai Prabhupada
Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada Jaya Prabhupada.
Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai Shri Prabhupada ki Jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnana Shalakya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamsya Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamsya Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nitinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashatya Deshatarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namane Gauratvashe Namaha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shubhasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna. So can we revise a few points from yesterday's discussions?
Hare Krishna Prabhu. So
Hare Krishna.
yesterday we started the chapter where Arjuna was asking about the difference between sannyasa and tyaga. And therein Lord gave his opinion, the difference between the two. That is, sannyasa is giving up of all the nitya karmas and naimitya
What
karmas.
sannyasa means giving up what?
Sannyasa is giving up activities based on material desires, but not nitya karmas and naimitya karmas.
Yes, that's right. Good.
And giving up results of all activities is renunciation, that is tyaga.
Yeah, okay, good.
Basically, Krishna does not give the difference explicitly because there is no difference when you give up the material desires between the difference between sannyasa and tyaga.
Okay, there's not much difference between the two. So Krishna uses the two terms interchangeably, yes. What else?
Then renunciation in the mode of ignorance, passion, and goodness. So renunciation in the mode of ignorance is when they don't, they do not know, they don't have the knowledge of what renunciation is, and they give up the work.
Yes. And they give up what?
Enjoying mentality and doership.
No. Renunciation in the mode of ignorance is what?
Giving up
prescribed duties.
Yes, giving up prescribed duties.
Giving up
Because of
nitya
illusion.
Illusion. Not knowing the Shastric injunction. So they give up their nitya and naimittic karmas also out of ignorance. That's renunciation mode of ignorance. Then passion?
Because of
laziness, bodily discomfort,
and
thinking the duty is troublesome.
Yes, troublesome bodily discomfort. Because of that, they give up. And goodness?
prescribed duty as it is has been done duty and give up the resist of activity to Krishna. This is a mode of goodness.
Right. So performing the prescribed duties without attachment to the results. Yes. What else we discussed?
5 causes of action: Adhishthanam, Karta, Karanam, Cheshta, and Daivam.
Okay, good. Okay, 5 causes of action. One or two more points?
And Krishna is inducing the Arjuna to fight with the Gnana. After explaining the Gnana, also his conclusion is that to fight.
How?
If you fight on my instructions, like you won't be binded in this material world. So like agent, employee works for the company.
Correct,
Is what is not be bonded here.
Yes, that's right. So the Deva. Instruction of Deva.
Who have no false ego, non-entangled and intelligent, is not bound.
Yes.
Without doership mentality.
Yes, without the doership, then there's no bondage. That's right.
The impetus we discussed, Prabhu, for doing 3 impetus.
Yes, what is that?
Knowledge, object of knowledge, and knower. And karma sangra, accumulation of work. The sense is the work and doer.
Okay, that's right. Karma chodana and karma sangra. Okay, fine. So now we'll go ahead to the next section from 19 to 40, which is controlled by the 3 modes. So once again, Krishna is coming to the platform of karma and talking about the 3 modes, how they influence the jivas in this material world. And once again, on the base of 3 modes, he's speaking different things. So 19th verse. Jnanam karma cha karta cha tridhaiva guna vedatah prochyate guna sankhyane yathavat shrinutanyapi. According to the 3 different modes of material nature, there are 3 kinds of knowledge, action, and performer of action. Now hear of them from me. Okay, so now he's going to speak about Jnanam, Karma, Karta, Tridaiva, Gunavedata. So, according to the 3 modes, he's going to speak about these 3 topics. Okay, fine. So 20. So first of all, he's going to speak about Jnanam. Sarvabhuteshu yenekam bhavam avyayamikshate avibhaktam vibhakteshu tajnanam vidhi satvikam. That knowledge by which one in undivided spiritual nature is seen in all living entities, though they are divided into innumerable forms, you should understand to be in the mode of goodness. So much of this is quite simple because most of these topics have already been covered previously. And so there's not much explanation besides what Srila Prabhupada has given in the purport. And so pretty simple things to understand. Okay, somebody can read the purport, please.
So that's Subhuti Prabhuji.
A person who sees one spirit soul in every living being, whether a demigod, human being, animal, bird, beast, aquatic, or plant, possesses knowledge in the mode of goodness. In all living entities, one spirit soul is there, although they have different bodies in terms of their previous work. As described in the 7th chapter, the manifestation of the living force in everybody is due to the superior nature of the Supreme Lord. Thus, to see that one superior nature, that living force in everybody, is to see the mode of goodness. That living energy is imperishable, although the bodies are perishable. Differences are perceived in terms of the body, because there are many forms of material existence in the conditional life. the living force appears to be divided. Such impersonal knowledge is an aspect of self-realization.
Okay, so avibhaktam vibhakteshu. If you remember in the 13th chapter also, when Krishna was speaking about the super soul, there also similar words were used. Avibhaktam vibhakteshu. So the Supreme Lord is undivided, but yet he appears to be divided, or the spirit soul also. So same spirit soul appears as if there's one spirit soul divided, but then it's basically the same spirit soul that's there in all the bodies. So it's again similar to the Vidya Vinay Sampannevas. So though the bodies are different, but basically there is the spirit soul. So that's knowledge in the mode of goodness. That means one has a clear understanding of the difference between body and soul. So if you remember in the 13th chapter, Prabhupada gave the example of the sun and the moon. So just like you go to different places, everywhere you find the sun overhead. So it appears as if the sun has been divided in different places, but it's the same sun. So similarly, the soul, super soul, of course, they're different souls, definitely, but then it's the same spirit soul in different bodies. So basically understanding the difference between body and soul, that's knowledge in the mode of goodness. 21. Pritaktveena tu yash jnanam nana bhavan pritakvidan vetti sarveshu bhuteshu tajnanam viddhi rajasam. That knowledge by which one sees that in every different body, there's a different type of living entity you should understand to be in the mode of passion. Please with the purport.
Shyam Chaitanya Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. The concept that the material body is the living entity and that...
A little louder, please.
The concept that the material body is the living entity and that with the destruction of the body, the consciousness is also destroyed is called knowledge in the mode of passion. According to that knowledge, bodies differ from one another because of the development of different types of consciousness. Otherwise, there is no separate soul which manifests consciousness. The body is itself the soul, and there is no separate soul beyond the body. According to such knowledge, consciousness is temporary, or else there are no individual souls, but there is an all-pervading soul which is full of knowledge. And this body is a manifestation of temporary ignorance, or beyond this body, there is no special individual or supreme soul. All such conceptions are considered products of the mode of passion.
Okay, so the symptom of Rajogun is a lot of speculation, mental speculation. That's a symptom of Rajogun. And so therefore, then when one is in Rajogun, then there are so many mental concoctions, so many philosophies. And so Prabhupada is presenting a few of these concocted philosophies. So one of them is there's no difference between body and soul. So it's all one. No difference between spirit and matter. Everything simply made of some chemicals. So we had discussed all these philosophies before. Demoniac philosophies. Krishna spoke in the 16th chapter also about these demoniac philosophies. So, or there are no individual souls, one all-pervading soul. So this is the impersonalist theory, or the Mayavad theory. Brahma Satya, Jagan Mithya. There's only one supreme Brahman. The souls come from that, and then after liberation, they merge into that impersonal Brahman. So all these are various concocted theories in the mode of passion. So when one is too much influenced by the mode of passion, this tendency is there to concoct things. So therefore, in conditioned life, these tendencies are very strong. So this is a contamination of jnana within the practice of devotional service, a tendency for mental speculation. So therefore, one has to be careful to avoid these tendencies and then simply present the Shastra as it is, simply present knowledge as it is. Okay, 22. Yattu kritsnavade kasmin karye saktam mahaitukam atatvartha avadalpam cha tattamasam udharitam. And that knowledge by which one is attached to one kind of work as the all in all, without knowledge of the truth, and which is very meager, is said to be a mode of darkness. Purport?
Abhayanand Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. The knowledge of the common man is always in the mode of darkness or ignorance, because every living entity is conditional life is born into the mode of ignorance. One who does not develop knowledge through the authorities or scriptural injection has knowledge that is limited to the body. He is not concerned about acting in terms of the direction of the scripture. For him, God is money, and knowledge means the satisfaction of bodily demands. Such knowledge has no connection with the absolute truth. It is more or less like the knowledge of the ordinary animals. The knowledge of eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. Such knowledge is described here as a product of the mode of darkness. In other words, knowledge concerning the spirit soul beyond the body is called knowledge in the mode of goodness. Knowledge producing many theories and doctrines by dint of mundane logic and mental speculation is the product of the mode of passion, and knowledge concerned only with keeping the body comfortable is said to be in the mode of ignorance. Hare Krishna.
Yes, so Prabhupada is summarizing to us then. So basically, knowledge in the mode of ignorance means practically no knowledge. So it's all sense gratification, practically animalistic life. That's what Prabhupada is writing here. God is money, and knowledge means the satisfaction of bodily demands. So therefore, as Prabhupada writes, that the knowledge of the common man is always in the mode of darkness. So especially these days, so whatever so-called knowledge people are having is ultimately all meant for sense gratification. So therefore, it's no knowledge at all. So as Prabhupada said it many times, technological knowledge, it's not knowledge, it's simply some craftsmanship. And basically it's meant for the Shudras. And so therefore, it's no knowledge at all. Real knowledge means understanding matter, spirit, the controller of both. That's real knowledge. So therefore, that's what we find these days. Most people are just in ignorance. And so therefore, they may say, okay, this knowledge, that knowledge, but ultimately what's the purpose? Ultimately, the purpose is eating, sleeping, defending, mating. And so therefore, it's simply knowledge in the mode of ignorance. Whoever they may be, as Prabhupada said in many lectures, so even though they may say, I am MA, PhD, DHC, whatever, but then it's ultimately all meant for eating, sleeping, mating, defending, then it is simply animalistic life. So that's no real knowledge at all. And so therefore, as the Bhagavatam says, such people, they are simply animalistic, how much big they may be. And then they're glorified by other animals, that's all. So if the king of the animals, the lion is glorified by other animals, what is the value of that glorification? So that is the modern day situation. And so therefore, when there's no connection with the absolute truth, then it's all knowledge in the mode of ignorance. So it's only basically different forms of sense gratification, that's all. Just like I was hearing one lecture today, Srila Prabhupada was saying that, between 1933 to 1947, so there was World War II and all that. So Adolf Hitler came, and then he had his conception of sense gratification. So he had his own conception. Sense gratification should be in this way. And then the other leaders of the world said, no, sense gratification should be this way. And then there was a fight. But then what's the fight for? Sense gratification. That's all. So somebody wants to do sense gratification this way, somebody wants to do sense gratification that way. That's the only difference. That's the only difference. And so therefore, somebody may study science, somebody may study medicine, somebody may study arts, but then ultimately what's the goal? Sense gratification. So this form of sense gratification, that form of sense gratification. Ultimately, it's all the same. Ultimately, it's all in ignorance. Okay, so this is knowledge in goodness, passion, and ignorance. And Prabhupada beautifully summarizes that at the end. Okay, now coming to karma, or action in the three modes. 23. Niyatam sangarahitam araga dveshata kritam abhala prepsuna karma yattat satvikam uchyate. That action which is regulated and which is performed without attachment, without love or hatred, and without desire for fruitive results is said to be in the mode of goodness. Purport?
Parvatama Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Regulated occupational duties as prescribed in the scriptures in terms of the different orders and divisions of society performed without attachment or proprietary rights, and therefore without any love or hatred, and performed in Krishna consciousness for the satisfaction of the Supreme without self-satisfaction or self-gratification are called actions in the mode of goodness.
Okay, so you'll find this features of the modes quite similar. So the main characteristics are quite similar in all the cases. And so here, niyatam means performing the prescribed duties, performing the nitya karmas. So that's niyatam. But then he performs all his actions without attachment. Sanga rahitam. Raga dveshata. So we discussed this yesterday also. One is not affected by kushalam or kushalam. What is auspicious, what is inauspicious. So one does not hate the inauspicious, one does not hanker for the auspicious. So similar thing here. Raga dveshata kritam. And afala prepsuna, no fruitive desires. So that is sattvic action. Okay, so as we were discussing, many times we discussed that at least as devotees, one should try to come to this mode of goodness. Then life will be conducive for transcendence of Krishna consciousness. So at least our endeavor should be to come to this mode of goodness. Otherwise, if we are stuck up with the lower modes, then to make progress in devotional service becomes very difficult. And so therefore, and that's the reason why Krishna is describing all this, not simply some theoretical exercise or, we have to finish the Bhakti Shastri course, and so we just read all the verses, and then once it's done, then everything is forgotten. No, that's not the purpose. If that's our purpose, simply to read the verses and write one exam and get a Bhakti Shastri certificate, we have missed the goal. We have missed the goal. So somebody who's really serious about progressing in devotional service must take all this very seriously. Seriously try to apply these principles in one's own practice of devotional service. So then there will be transformation, then there will be benefits, then there'll be progress. So the fruitive mentality is very deep rooted, very deep rooted. So even in the society of devotees, we find the fruitive mentality so deep rooted, so much struggle to achieve results. Not for Krishna. If they struggle for achieving results for Krishna, that's fine. But then it's for myself, then it becomes a problem. So if individually and collectively we want to make progress in devotional service, then we have to learn to abide by these principles. Otherwise, there's so much trouble. Trouble for oneself, trouble for others, trouble for the whole society. And of course, it has been going on since years. Practically, we can see from the beginning of ISKCON, in the history, we can see the struggle is always there because we're in the material world, the influence of the modes is very strong. But then, as we read in the previous purports, Prabhupada says, by practice, by determination, that's how one can rise above the influence of the lower modes. So trying to give up that fruitive mentality is an important element which Krishna is emphasizing throughout the Gita, practically from the beginning to the end, because it's so deep-rooted. So the important characteristic of the mode of goodness that we see as a common factor everywhere is not being attached to the fruits, giving up the fruitive mentality and performing activities simply as a matter of duty. Okay, 24. Now the mode of passion. Yatto kamepsuna karma sahankarena va punaha kriyate bahulayasam tadrajasam mudharitam. But action performed with great endeavor by one seeking to gratify his desires and enacted from a sense of false ego is called action in the mode of passion. Okay, so passion again, the same characteristics everywhere. Kama ipsuna, so fruitive desires for kama, for satisfaction of one's kama, one's enjoying mentality. And so ahankarena, so it's performed with ego. Ego means, as we were discussing yesterday also, I am the doer. I am the doer. Ishvaro aham bogi. So that is the mentality. I. That is sa ahankarena. Kriyate bahulaya sam. Great labor, lot of endeavor is there. But for what? What is the endeavor for? Sahankarena and kamepsuna. The endeavor is for satisfying one's own ahankar and for getting the fruitive results. I did this. I distributed so many books. I did this. I built this temple. I did this. So that's all. So ahankarena for that. I collected so many funds. I collected so much money. So it's all about I, the ahankar. And for that, there's a lot of efforts. So of course, within Krishna consciousness, the problem is, of course, we have a mix. So we tend to have some desires for Krishna, some desires for oneself. But then as long as the mix is there, then it doesn't give a lot of satisfaction because Krishna is not satisfied with the mix, the contaminated devotional service. As I think so, we gave the example in a previous class. Sweet rice mixed with sand. The sweet rice is good, but make some sand. It's not very good. So that's what happens if we mix our desires. Okay, 25. Anubandham kshayam himsam anapeksha cha paurusham mohad arabhyate karma yattattamasamuchyate. That action performed in illusion, in disregard of scripture injunctions, and without concern for future bondage or for violence or distress caused to others is said to be in the mode of ignorance. Purport?
Shweta Mataji.
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhuji. One has to give account of one's action to the state or to the agents of Supreme Lord called the Yamdutas. Irresponsible work is destructive because it destroys the regulative principles of scriptural injunction. It is often based on violence and is distressing to other living entities. Such irresponsible work is carried out in the light of one's personal experience. This is called illusion, and all such illusory work is the product of the mode of ignorance.
Yes, so ignorance means anubandham, shayam, himsa. So there is no consideration of future bondage. Shayam. Shayam here refers to causing harm to oneself. We read this in previous verses also. In the mode of ignorance, the person causes harm to oneself and causes violence to others, both. So because he's ignorant, he's not following the scriptures, obviously he's causing harm to himself, because as Prabhupada is writing, then one has to give the account to Yamaraj. So that means he's going to get punishment. So if I don't follow the laws of scripture, I'm not causing much harm to others. Mostly I'm causing harm to myself only. The most harm is to myself by not following. So that is Shayam. And then of course, then there's violence to others also. So basically it's mohat without considering the scriptural injunctions. So therefore, as Prabhupada said it very often, ignorance of law is no excuse. So therefore one has to know the scriptures. So one can't say, oh, I didn't know. Prabhupada's famous example. If one drives on the wrong side of the road saying that I didn't know, no, you won't be excused. So simply ignorance of the scriptures will not help. Therefore, one has to read the scriptures. One has to find out what is right, what is wrong, not just speculate. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada has given us all these books and given us so many instructions within the books. And so therefore, it's important that we read them, we find out what is right, what is wrong, and not speculate. So everything should be based on the scriptures. Then one will not be put into bondage. So that is, so in ignorance, then one doesn't take into consideration the scriptures and acts whimsically. So this is action in the three modes. Now we go to karta, worker in the three modes. 26. Mukta sango anhamvadi dhrityutsaha samanvitaha siddhyo nirvikaraha karta satvika uchyate. One who performs his duty without association with the modes of material nature, without false ego, with great determination and enthusiasm, and without wavering in success or failure, is said to be a worker in the mode of goodness. Okay.
Nishant Prabhuji.
Yes, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. A person in Krishna consciousness is always transcendental to the material modes of nature. He has no expectations for the result of the work entrusted to him because he is above false ego and pride. Still, he is always enthusiastic till the completion of such work. He does not worry about the distress undertaken. He is always enthusiastic. He does not care for success or failure. He is equal in both distress and happiness. Such a worker is situated in the mode of goodness.
Yes. So again, you find common factors. Mukta Sangha, free from all material association, anahamvadi. So aham, as you were saying, ego means aham, I. Now this is anahamvadi. So he's not influenced by false ego. And so dhriti utsa, with determination, enthusiasm, he carries out his duties, even though siddhyo asiddhyo, siddhi asiddhyo. Whether there is success or failure, doesn't matter. He's not affected. Samanvita. Nirvikara. So that's mode of goodness, the duty platform. Not so much concerned with the results, success or failure. If one is told to do a certain activity, certain duty, one does it. Sometimes there may be success, sometimes there may be failure. So, especially for the devotee perfectly understands that ultimately it's not the result that actually matters, it's the endeavor that matters. So even though apparently there's a failure in terms of the results, but Krishna takes into account the endeavor and the sincerity that has gone into the activity. So what is the enthusiasm, the determination to perform the activity? That is taken into consideration. The very famous example in the Ramayana is of Jatayu. We all know the example. So Jatayu apparently lost in the fight against Ravan. But then, did he lose? No, he won. Because he won the favor and the grace of Lord Ramachandra, who performed the last rites for him and sent him back to the spiritual worlds. And so therefore, we should be more concerned about the endeavor than the results. Of course, results are for Krishna. And so therefore, we should definitely put our full endeavor. But then, irrespective of that, then one continues on if that's our duty. Like we see in the case of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, so many years before he went to the West, he tried in India, practically no success in India. After going to the West also for 1-2 years, hardly any success. Prabhupada was in fact thinking of coming back. But Prabhupada continued because he was dedicated to the instruction of a spiritual master. And then we see then how Guru and Krishna reciprocated with that endeavor and brought about so much of success. But then the endeavor is what counts. The sincerity is what counts. And so therefore, when one understands that, then one continues on with the endeavor, with the duty, irrespective of what are the results. So that's in Sattvagun, because one is not too attached to the results. So that's a worker in Sattvagun. Okay, now Rajagun. Ragi karma phala prepsur lubdho himsatmako suchi harsha shokan vita karta rajasa parikirtitaha. The worker who's attached to work and the fruits of work, desiring to enjoy those fruits, and who's greedy, always envious, impure, and moved by joy and sorrow, is said to be in the mode of passion. Purport?
Anand Prabhuji.
Yeah, a person is too much attached to a certain kind of work or to the result because he has too much attachment for materialism or hearth and home, wife and children. Such a person has no desire for higher elevation in life. He is simply concerned with making this world as materially comfortable as possible. He is generally very greedy and he thinks that anything attained by him is permanent and never to be lost. Such a person is envious of others and prepared to do anything wrong for sense gratification. Therefore, such a person is unclean and he does not care whether his earning is pure or impure. He is very happy if his work is successful and very much distressed when his work is not successful. Such is the worker in the mode of passion.
Yes. So again, similar points. So Ragi karma phala prepsu. So very much attached to the karma phal. And there's a lot of greed for getting the fruits. Lubdha, lobi, greedy for the fruits. And so when one is very greedy for the fruits, very anxious for the results of one's work, then there's always envy. Because one cannot tolerate somebody else's success. Because I want everything for myself. Nobody else should get anything. So anybody is getting anything, then one becomes envious. So that's what happens in the mode of passion. So much of envy, so much of materialistic competition. And so himsatmaka. So he may commit violence out of envy. So when there's envy, because one cannot tolerate others' success, so then do something to bring them down, criticize the other person, blaspheme him, cause trouble to him, cause obstacles in his work so that he cannot make progress. So these are all the symptoms of envy. And ashuchi, so then because he wants the results, hook or by crook, doesn't matter. So all unclean ways, illegal ways, impure ways to get what I want, whether it's money or something else. But then one is ready to go to any extent to get. And then harsha shoka. So because he's very much attached to the results, then he becomes very much affected by the results. So if he gets what he wants, harsha. If he doesn't get what he wants, shoka. So very much moved by happiness and distress because of the attachment to the results. So these are the symptoms of Rajogun. 28. Ayukta prakrita stabdha shato neshkritiko lasa vishadi dirgha sutri cha karta tamasa uchyate. The worker who's always engaged in work against the injunctions of the scripture, who's materialistic, obstinate, cheating, expert in insulting others, who's lazy, always morose, and procrastinating, is said to be a worker in the mode of ignorance. Purport?
Vikasana Prabhuji.
In the scriptural injunctions, we find what sort of work should be performed and what sort of work should not be performed. Those who do not care for those injunctions engage in work not to be done, and such persons are generally materialistic. They work according to the modes of nature, not according to the injunctions of the scripture. Such workers are not very gentle, and generally they are always cunning and expert in insulting others. They are very lazy. Even though they have some beauty, they do not do it properly, and they put it aside to be done later on. Therefore, they appear to be morose. They procrastinate. Anything which can be done in an hour, they drag on for years. Such workers are situated in the mode of ignorance.
So, ayukta. So again, the same characteristic in the mode of ignorance. Ayukta, not caring for the scriptures. And prakrita, materialistic mentality, stabda, obstinate, shata. Shata means deceitful, cheating. Nesh kritika, expert in insulting others. So finding joy in insulting others, sarcastic words and insulting. And so basically enjoying at the expense of others. Alasa, lazy. I heard this saying from Tulsi Das. One devotee was telling, Ram naam mein alas, bhojan mein hoshiyaar. Aise जीवन का बार बार धिक्कार. So yes, so when it comes to spiritual life, lazy. When it comes to material life, very eager. And so because they're leading such a type of life, they're never happy. Vishadi, Vishadi. Arjun Vishad Yoga. So yes, so Vishadi means morose. Because there is no taste. There's no taste in life. There is no good reason to live. There are no good goals. And Dirgha Sutri, procrastinating. So lazy, so therefore postponing things, giving excuses for postponing. So all these are symptoms of mode of ignorance. So in this way, Krishna is described jnana, karma, and karta in the three modes. Now he speaks of something else. 29. Buddhir bedam diteschaiva gunatastri vidam shrinu prochyamanam asheshena pratatvena dhananjaya. A winner of wealth, now please listen as I tell you in detail of the different kinds of understanding and determination according to the three modes of material nature. So now he's going to speak about buddhi and dhriti, understanding and determination in the three modes, or intelligence and determination. 30. Pravrittem cha nivrittem cha karya karye bhaya bhaye bandham moksham cha ya vetti buddhi sa partha satviki. O son of Pritha, that understanding by which one knows what ought to be done and what ought not to be done, what is to be feared and what is not to be feared, what is binding and what is liberating, is in the mode of goodness. Okay, so basically there is discrimination on the basis of Shastra. So there is a proper Shastric understanding, and then one knows what is pravritti, nivritti, karya, akarya, bandham, moksham. So one is able to discriminate between all this and then lead a life accordingly. So that is intelligence or understanding in the mode of goodness. So one will be able to discriminate only if one has knowledge. If one doesn't have knowledge, then where's the question of discrimination? So then the mind. So if one doesn't have knowledge of the scriptures and one doesn't take shelter of the guru, then the mind becomes the guru. The mind, with whom we have been traveling since time immemorial, our so-called friends. So if you don't take shelter of Guru Sadhu Shastra, then definitely one will take shelter of the mind and then act according to the mind. And the mind is very likely to take us to Rajagun and Tamagun. 31. Yaya dharmam adharmam cha karyam cha karyameva cha ayathavat prajanati buddhi sa partha rajasi. O son of Pritha, that understanding which cannot distinguish between religion and irreligion, between action that should be done and action that should not be done, is in the mode of passion. Okay, so if one cannot distinguish, then that's in the mode of passion. So then, okay, what I like, what I don't like, so then it's all on the level of the mind. Sankalpa, vikalpa, okay, I like something, I'll do it. I don't like something, I won't do it. So that's all in the mode of passion. And 32. Adharmam dharmamiti ya manyate tamasavrita sarvarthan viparitamscha buddhi sa partha tamasi. That understanding which considers irreligion to be religion and religion to be religion, under the spell of illusion and darkness, and strives always in the wrong direction, O Partha, is in the mode of ignorance. Purport?
Deepak Prabhuji.
Intelligence in the mode of ignorance is always working the opposite of the way it should. It accepts religion which are not actually religions and rejects actually religion. Men in ignorance understand a great soul to be a common man and accept a common man as a great soul. They think truth to be untruth and accept untruth as truth. In all activities, they simply take the wrong path. Therefore, their intelligence is in mode of ignorance.
Okay, so in ignorance, everything is ulta. Everything is opposites. So they take true dharma to be adharma and dharma to be dharma. Then accept a common man as God and God as common man. So that's very common these days. So many gods. So somebody on the streets becomes God and so many foolish people follow. And then the real gods, oh, he's an ordinary person. So that's all in the mode of ignorance. So as we read in that song, Nitai Padakamala, Asatyera Satya Kori Mani. So one takes Asatya to be Satya and Satya to be Asatya. So these are all symptoms of the mode of ignorance. So that's buddhi or understanding in the three modes. Now coming to determination in the three modes. Dritya yaya dharayate mana pranindriya kriyaha yogi na vyabhicharinya dhriti sa partha satviki. O son of Pritha, that determination which is unbreakable, which is sustained with steadfastness by yoga practice, and which thus controls the activities of the mind, life, and senses, is determination in the mode of goodness. Okay, so this is determination goodness. Dhrityayaya dharyate. Dharyate means sustains. So in the mode of goodness, the determination will sustain because there is a proper understanding that yes, this is a duty which is mentioned in the scriptures. It is good for me. It is good for liberation. It's good for spiritual progress. So because one has that proper understanding, so then the determination persists. There is steadiness in the determination because the goal is clear. There's sustenance. So maintenance, sustenance can only be there in the mode of goodness. In the lower modes, then the sustenance is very difficult. So at all levels, mana, prana, indriya, at all levels there is that determination, which is avyabhicharinya, without any break. As Prabhupada writes in the purport that one who is steadily fixed in the Supreme Soul with determination. So the goal is clear. And when the goal is clear, concentrating one's mind, life, sensory activities on the Supreme engaged Krishna. That's out of determined mode of goodness. The word avyabhicharinya is very significant, for it indicates that person engaged Krishna consciousness never depleted by activity. So then it does not matter whether there are obstacles or no obstacles, whether the situation is favorable, unfavorable, but still the determination goes on. Again, we can take the example of Srila Prabhupada. Also, we see the case of Haridas Thakur. He was allured by the prostitute and even Maya Devi, but then he remained fixed. So that's how one remains fixed, even though one has so many temptations and obstacles, because the goal is fixed. 34. Yaya tu dharma kamarthan dritya dharyate arjuna prasangena falakankshi dhriti sa partha rajasi. But that determination by which one holds fast to fruitive results in religion, economic development, sense gratification is of the nature of passion. So again, similar characteristics. Kama arthan. So basically the desire is kama, prasangena, attachment to what? Phala akankshi, so desiring fruitive results. So these are common factors. Whenever we talk of Rajagun, then these are common factors. Attachment to the fruits and sense gratification. So he's determined for that. Of course, Bhaktivinoda Thakur said we can learn from the materialists how they're determined to get the fruits of their activities, how to get sense gratification. And Prabhupada also writes in his purports how the materialistic people are working so hard. And I think in one lecture Prabhupada is saying that maybe they get up earlier than the devotees also. And sometimes we do find in big cities like Mumbai, Delhi, and Bangalore. So maybe they get up earlier than devotees because they have to travel long distances, so much of traffic jam, or catch so many trains. And so travel long distances, go to the office, then face the boss in the office, do the work, meet deadlines, and then come back home late at night. So much determination. It requires determination to do that. But then it's all based on sense gratification. Aham bhogi, I'm the enjoyer. So then one is ready to work hard for that. But then as Bhakti Thakur, one can learn. So determination is required. But then, as in the Nectar of Instruction, Prabhupada gives the definition of utsaha. And so we saw previously, the one in the mode of goodness, he works with utsaha, with enthusiasm. But what is the definition of enthusiasm? Prabhupada gives in the Nectar of Instruction. Working with intelligence, working with endeavor with intelligence in Krishna consciousness is called utsaha. So there is endeavor, no doubt, but it's not mindless endeavor or goalless endeavor. No, there's a very fixed goal. And it's not just whimsical, but with intelligence. And there's a fixed goal in Krishna consciousness. Then that's in the mode of goodness. Otherwise, even the materialists are determined. But then it's for the wrong goals. 35. Yaya swapnam bhayam shokam vishadam madameva cha na vimunchati durmedha dhriti sa partha tamasi. And that determination, which cannot go beyond dreaming, fearfulness, lamentation, moroseness, and illusion, such unintelligent determination, O son of Pritha, is in the mode of darkness. Purport?
Shrikant Srinivas Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. It should not be concluded that a person in the mode of goodness does not dream. Here, dream means too much sleep. Dreaming is always present, either in the mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance. Dreaming is a natural occurrence. But those who cannot avoid oversleeping, who cannot avoid the pride of enjoying material objects, who are always dreaming of lording it over the material world, and whose life, mind, and senses are thus engaged or considered to have determination in the mode of ignorance.
So swapna. So here, Prabhupada explains, swapna means too much dreaming, too much sleeping, too much dreaming. And maybe daydreaming also. As Prabhupada says, dreaming of lording it over material worlds. Okay, so that's daydream. I'm sure many of you may know that, but Prabhupada told that story of the man who was selling milk. The man who was selling milk, he had a pot of milk and he was going to sell it. Then he sat down on a tree to take some rest and he dozed off, he slept. And as he dozed off, then he began to dream that he will sell the milk and he will earn so much of money and then he will buy a big house, he'll get married to a wife and have children. And then if the wife and children don't obey him, then he'll take the stick and beat them. And as he was dreaming, so he took the stick and he hit the pot of milk. And the pot broke and all the milk was spilled. All the milk went away. And he woke up, milk gone, no money. So that's daydreaming. So sometimes people simply daydream. So there's daydream and night dream. So all that is in the mode of ignorance. Too much sleep, too much dreaming. And bhayam, too much bhai, fear. As the Bhagavatam explains, what is the cause of bhai, fear? Bhayam dvitiya biniveshata syat. So seeing something separate from Krishna, that is the cause of bhai. So one in the mode of ignorance or passion also, they're always fearful. Will I get the results? Will I get my sleep? Will I get my foods? Will I be safe? So always so much of anxiety because there's no shelter. There's no shelter. So that's the cause of fear. The Bhagavatam gives two examples that just like a child, when the child does not see his mother, immediately becomes fearful. That means no shelter. Similarly, the citizens, if they see that there is no king, no government to take care, they become fearful. So the same principle. The principle is when there is no shelter, and that becomes a cause of fear. But on the other hand, Prabhupada says that a devotee, he is just like the child in the lap of the mother. So just like the child in the lap of the mother sleeps peacefully, so similarly a devotee, he has full shelter of the Supreme Lord, and so he is blissful. He has no anxiety, no fear. But those in the lower modes are always fearful. And similarly, shokam, lamentation. Just like Prabhupada wrote in the purport to the second chapter, first verse, Prabhupada wrote, lamentation, tears, and illusion are symptoms of ignorance, symptoms of Shudra. So it's a Shudra who always laments over the past. So why? Because the bodily concept is very deep. So therefore there's not of shokam, vishadam, madam, illusion, because there's no knowledge of scriptures. So this also requires some determination. And there's also determination in the mode of darkness. So he's determined to sleep. Determined to enjoy. So this also requires some determination. Of course, there's a default setting in the material worlds. So to rise above that requires a great struggle. So that's determination in the three modes. Now Krishna says, O best of the Bharatas, now please hear from me about the three kinds of happiness by which the conditioned soul enjoys and by which she sometimes comes to the end of all distress. Okay, read the purport.
Mallikarjun Prabhuji.
A conditioned soul tries to enjoy material happiness again and again. Thus, he chews the chewed. But sometimes, in the course of such enjoyment, he becomes relieved from material entanglement by association with the great soul. In other words, a conditioned soul is always engaged in some type of sense gratification. But when he understands by the good association that it is only a repetition of the same thing, and he is awakened to his real Krishna consciousness, he is sometimes relieved from such repetitive so-called happiness.
So Prabhupada is describing our material happiness in general. So basically it is chewing the chewed, same thing. But still one thinks maybe there's something else, some different juice. So we find people are trying to do so many activities, thinking that there'll be some different type of pleasure. So many different types of cars and so many different types of dresses and so many things. People think they'll get some pleasure by making a change. No, but it's the same thing. Or people think by changing the place, there'll be a different. No, but the Shastri, Brahma Bhuvana Loka. It is the same old story. Wherever one goes, it's the same old story. No difference. But still, chewing the chews. So just like sugarcane, juice has been removed. Again, one is chewing, thinking there'll be more juice. No, nothing is going to be there. So that's material life. And that has been going on since time immemorial. And of course, We have heard it many times about the nature of material happiness, like mirage in the desert. So one thinks there is water, but actually there's no water. One's simply running after it. So that's the nature of material happiness. So somehow by good fortune, if one comes in the association of a Mahatma, great soul, then one can be relieved of this attempt to enjoy so-called happiness. So now Krishna speaks about happiness in the three modes. 37. Yattadagre vishamiva pariname amrutopamam tatsukham satvikam proktam atma buddhi prasadajam. That which in the beginning may be just like poison, but at the end is just like nectar, and which awakens one to self-realization, is said to be happiness in the mode of goodness. Purport?
Okay, no one is. I'll read. In the pursuit of self-realization, one has to follow many rules and regulations to control the mind and the senses and to concentrate the mind on the self. All these procedures are very difficult, bitter like poison. But if one is successful in following the regulations and comes to the transcendental position, he begins to drink real nectar and he enjoys life.
Yes, so it is in the mode of goodness, agre visham. In the beginning, it may be like poison. Why? Because there's no taste for spiritual life, no taste for following all the rules and regulations. As we were discussing yesterday also, rising early in the morning, taking bath, attending Manglarti, chanting the holy names, there's no taste, but what to do? So it may appear like visham, it may appear like poison. But if one continues, then pariname amritopamam. The parinam, the result will be, one will be able to taste nectar. As Lord Rishabdev is saying. Tapo divyam putraka yena satvam shuddhyet yasmad brahma saukyam tu anantam. Nayam deho debajam loke kashtan kaman arhate bidibujam ye. That's a human life, nirloke, human life, is not meant simply for working hard like the hogs and dogs, vidbujam, referring to the hogs. But then what is it meant for? Tapo divyam, tapasya. We already studied about tapasya in the three modes. So not tapasya like the demons and the materialistic people. They are also doing tapasya, but not that type of tapasya. What type of tapasya? Tapo divyam, divine, transcendental tapasya for the right purposes, for progress in spiritual life on the transcendental path. So all these rules and regulations, which one may not like to follow, but if one follows, that's a tapasya. In one lecture, Prabhupada is saying, being humble is also tapasya. One doesn't like to be humble. So following all this process of devotional service is a tapasya in the conditioned states. But if one does that, what's the result? Shuddhi, yasmad, one will get purified, and then Brahma Saukyam tu Anantam. Then one will be able to experience the Brahma Sukh, the transcendental happiness, which is Anantam, which is unending, everlasting. But for that, one has to pay the price. Okay, on the other hand, in the mode of passion, Vishayendriya Sanyoga Yatat Agre Amrutopamam Pariname Vishamiva Tat Sukham Rajasam Smritam. That happiness which is derived from contact of the senses with your objects and which appears like nectar at first, but poison at the end, is said to be of the nature of passion. Okay, so sense gratification. Initially, it appears as if there is some nectar, there is some satisfaction, but the result will be vishame. The result will be like poison. So that's always the case with sense gratification. So many verses in the Shastra. The fifth chapter of the Gita, 22nd verse. So, Yehi samsparshaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evate adyantavant kaunteya na teshu ramate buddha. The contact of the senses with the sense objects gives birth to dukkha. So initially there may be some so-called happiness. It's only an illusion actually. It's all in the mind. But one imagines some so-called happiness. The other example which Prahlad Maharaj gives is of scratching the itch. So when one scratches, so initially there's some relief, some satisfaction, but then as one continues to scratch, then there is bleeding. So that's the nature of material happiness. So initially there may be some so-called satisfaction, some so-called happiness with sense gratification, but it may lead to so much of distress. So Prabhupada talks about married life. So if it's simply based on sense gratification, there's every possibility of leading to divorce and so many other problems. 39. Yadagre chanubande cha sukham mohanamatmanah nidralasya pramadottam tattamasam mudharitam. And that happiness, which is blind to self-realization, which is delusion from beginning to end, and which arises from sleep, laziness, and illusion, is said to be of the nature of ignorance. Purport?
One who takes pleasure in laziness and in sleep is certainly in the mode of darkness, ignorance, and one who has no idea how to act and how not to act is also in the mode of ignorance. For the person in mode of ignorance, everything is illusion. There is no happiness either in the beginning or at the end. For the person in the mode of passion, there might be some kind of ephemeral happiness in the beginning and at the end distress. But for the person in mode of ignorance, there is only distress both in the beginning and at the end.
Okay, so both in the beginning and the end, only distress. Because it's only based on illusion and nidra, alasya, pramad. So it's just like all this intoxication and drinking, smoking. So Prabhupada in one lecture is talking about smoking, a smoking advertisement, which he saw. And they're advertising, be cool, cigarette advertisements. So Prabhupada is saying, what nonsense? There's fire over there, and they're saying, be cool. So crazy nonsense. So they're burning their lungs, and they say, be cool. So what is the pleasure there? There's absolutely no pleasure. There's absolutely no pleasure. But it's so much in ignorance. There's some fire there which is burning, and he thinks there's some pleasure there. His lips are burning, his lungs are burning, and he thinks there's some pleasure. It's simply in the mind. There's nothing more than that. Even physically, there's no pleasure. And then what to speak of later? So that's in the mode of ignorance. So all these intoxication, drugs. So even in the beginning, there is no pleasure actually. And then what to speak of the end? But so much of illusion and ignorance. And 40. So Krishna says, Natad asti prithivyam va divi deveshu va punaha sattvam prakritijair muktam yadevi syatribir gune. There is no being existing either here or among the demigods in the higher planetary systems, which is freed from these three modes born of material. Okay, so as we already discussed this point before, in the material world, to be free from the influence of the modes is very, very difficult. Throughout the material world, all the planetary systems, as Prabhupada says, even sometimes Brahma and Shiva also become influenced by the modes. So that's how the modes are extremely powerful in the material world. Okay, so this table is in your handbooks. Okay, nothing much. Okay, same things. Okay, we are going to one more short section from 41 to 48, and then we will take questions. So now, Krishna has described how everyone in the material world is influenced by the three modes. So now the next question arises, how to get free from the influence of the modes? That's the purpose of the whole discussion. So we have understood that, yes, at least one must come to Sattvagun and then transcend the Sattvagun. So the ultimate goal is liberation from the three modes. So that's the next question. So how to get free from the influence of the modes? And so therefore, in the Bhagavatam also, the example is given of removing a thorn with a thorn. So one thorn has gone inside, take another thorn to remove it. I don't know how much experience people in cities have of thorns. But in any case, so that's the example that's given. So what does it mean? So basically it means, but there's also one other example that's given. Maybe this may be understood, more relevant. So it's said even in martial arts, like this karate and things like that. So the principle is to use the energy of the other person to defeat him. Okay, so the other person is trying to attack with certain amount of energy. So rather than opposing that energy, use the energy against him. Use the same energy against him. So that's the principle. So the principle here of prescribed duties or varnashram duties is the same. So, okay, so one is influenced by the modes. Don't try to oppose them, but use them so that one gets purified. So that's the principle of varnashram dharma. So therefore, because if one simply tries to oppose the modes, it's not going to work. Because the influence of the modes is very strong in this material world. So therefore, it's better that one uses the modes in the right direction and then get purified of the influence of the modes. And that's what Krishna has described in the 4th chapter also. Chaturvarnyam maya shishnam guna karma vibhaksh. So guna. So because different people are influenced by the different modes, and so therefore Krishna himself has prescribed different duties for people in the different modes. And so by performing those duties, which are prescribed by Krishna himself, but then how to perform them, Krishna is going to describe now. But then, because they're prescribed by Krishna, by performing them, one gets purified. One gets purified of the influence of the modes, one gets more jnana, and then that's how one makes progress. So that's the essential principle of varnashram, and in order to get free from the influence of the modes. And that's the reason why Krishna is describing the varnashram duties here. Of course, what Krishna is describing here are only sutras, which are elaborately described in the Bhagavatam. So we are not going to get into all the details. If you want more details on this subject, you can refer to the 7th canto, when Narad Muni is speaking to Yudhishthira Maharaj about the 4 varnas and the 4 ashrams and quite good details. And similarly, there is a description in the 11th canto in the Uddhav Gita. So you want more details, you can refer to that. So here, Krishna is just giving a sort of synopsis and some brief understanding. So 41. Brahmana, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras are distinguished by the qualities born of their own natures in accordance with the material modes or chastisement of the enemy. So now the qualities of Brahmanas. Famous verse. Shamo damastapa shaucham shantirajamameva cha jnanam vijnanam astikyam brahma karma swabhavajam. So Krishna is describing 9 qualities of those in the mode of goodness and those who are Brahmanical. So as already been described in the 4th chapter, so Brahmana, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras, the 4 Varnas. So it's based on guna and karma. It's not based on birth. So based upon the qualities one is acquired, based upon that. So, and of course, the Shastras are describing if one is born in a Brahmana family, but one doesn't have the qualities, then he's called a Brahmabandhu, like Ashwatthama. So, ideally, a Brahmana should possess these qualities. So, Shama is peacefulness, control of the mind. Dhamma is control of the senses. Tapa, austerity. Shaucham, purity. Of course, all these qualities we have discussed before also in the 13th chapter especially. Shanti, tolerance. Arjavam, honesty or simplicity. Jnanam, knowledge. Vijnanam, wisdom or realized knowledge. Astikyam, religiousness. Prabhupada also describes this as faith in the Lord. So all these are qualities by which Brahmanas work. Okay, 43. Shauryam tejo dhriti daksham yuddhe chapya palayanam danam ishvara bhavascha shatram karma swabhavajam. Heroism, power, determination, resourcefulness, courage in battle, generosity and leadership are the natural qualities of work for the Kshatriyas. So Shauryam, heroism. So they are very, as Prabhupada describes, that just like Battle of Kurukshetra, everyone was there on the battlefield. Even somebody as old as Bhishma, he was there on the battlefields. Not like the modern day politicians sitting in their air-conditioned chambers and simply passing orders on the poor soldiers on the battlefields. Not like that. So he's heroic on the front, and Teja, powerful to punish the enemies, protect the weak. And for doing that, Dhriti, determination. Daksham means expert. So expert in management, expert in whatever diplomacy is required in battle. Apalayanam, not fleeing from the battle. So that was the Kshatriya dharma, never showing back to the enemy. One is ready to lay down one's life on the battlefields. At the same time, Dhanam, charity. We hear of Jarasandha, very generous. That's how he fought with Bhima. Ishvara Bhava, that is leadership qualities, being the controller, but then that is again for protecting others, not for self-aggrandizement. So these are the qualities of Kshatriyas. And then Vaishyas, Krishi Goraksha Vanijam, Vaishya Karma Swabhavajam, Paricharyatmakam Karma, Shudrasyapi Swabhavajam. So he is combining both Vaishyas and Shudras. So Krishi Goraksha Vanijam, farming, cow protection, business. Proper describing this, he says, Goraksha, it is said Goraksha. So it is not simply taking care of cattle, not all types of animals, no, but specifically Goraksha has been mentioned. So that's what the Vaishyas are supposed to do. But how many are doing? And the Shudras, Paricharyatmakam, giving service to the other 3 classes. That's for the Shudras. Then he says, 45, Sve sve karmanya virata samsiddhim labate naraha swakarma nirata siddhim yatha vindati takshrino. By following his qualities of work, every man can become perfect. Okay, so if one simply follows sve sve karmani, whatever prescribed duty one has, if one simply follows that, what is the result? Samsiddhim labate nara. One will achieve samsiddhim because these duties have been prescribed by the Supreme Lord himself. in the scriptures. And so therefore, by following that, one gets purified and will achieve perfection. So now please hear from me how this can be done. So how it can be done, Krishna describes in the next verse. 46. Yata pravrittir bhutanam yena sarvam idam tadam swakarmanatham abhyarcha siddhim vindati manava. By worship of the Lord, who is the source of all beings and who is all pervading, a man can attain perfection through performing his own work. So the important point is swakarmanatham abhyarcha. So tham refers to him or the Supreme Lords. So basically, by offering the fruits of one's work and performing the work for the satisfaction of the Supreme. So that's how one achieves perfection in one's own occupational duties. Okay, read the purport.
Vijay Narasimha Prabhuji. Okay. Abhay Anand Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhuji.
As stated in the 15th chapter, all living beings are fragmental parts and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Thus, the Supreme Lord is the beginning of all living entities. This is confirmed in the Vedanta Sutra, Janmadis Asya Yatha. The Supreme Lord is therefore the beginning of life of every living entity. And as stated in the 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Lord, by his two energies, his external energy and internal energy, is all pervading. Therefore, one should worship the Supreme Lord with his energies. Generally, the Vaishnava devotees worship the Supreme Lord with his internal energy. His external energy is a perverted reflection of the internal energy. The external energy is a background, but the Supreme Lord, by the expansion of his plenary portion as Paramatma, is situated everywhere. He is the super soul of all demigods, all human beings, all animals, everywhere. One should therefore know that as part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, one has his duty to render service unto the Supreme. Everyone should be engaged in devotional service to the Lord in full Krishna consciousness. This is recommended in this verse. Everyone should think that he is engaged in a particular type of occupation by Harikesha, the master of the senses, and by the result of the worship in which one is engaged, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, should be worshipped. If one thinks always in this way, in full Krishna consciousness, then by the grace of the Lord, he becomes fully aware of everything. That is the perfection of life. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 12.7, Tesam aham samudradharta. The Supreme Lord himself takes charge of delivering such a devotee. That is the highest perfection of life. In whatever occupation one may be engaged, if he serves the Supreme Lord, he will achieve the highest perfection. Hare Krishna.
All right. Just a side point, Siddharth Prabhu, sometimes, Siddharth?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Sometimes you call out some names, why they don't respond?
Sometimes, Prabhuji, actually we have forcibly muted everyone. So sometimes while unmuting, there is a problem at their end. I think that's why that happens.
Okay.
So I unmute from here, and then there they have to press on OK to unmute. By mistake, if sometimes they press on not OK, so then that back and forth happens sometimes.
Okay. Otherwise, you know, the problem with these online classes is nobody knows what the other person is doing.
Yes. So
one could just log in and be doing 100 other things.
Yes,
so we really don't know. This is a problem with these online classes.
Generally, we go by devotees who raise their hand, so we go in order of that.
No, sometimes you should ask those who don't raise hands.
Okay, Guruji. Next class onwards.
to see whether they're actually there.
Okay.
So that's what I'm noticing, that you keep asking the same people to read again and again.
Because,
and there are about 40 people, but I don't see all the 40 people responding.
Okay. In that case, Prabhuji, then I can take any name in that case.
Yes, you should.
All right. All right. Prabhuji, we'll do that.
Random, whether people are actually there.
Sure. Okay, Prabhuji, we'll do that.
Okay, fine. So here Krishna is giving the solution as to how prescribed duties purify a person. So the purification takes place when the work is being performed for the Supreme Lord. So Nectar of Devotion will discuss this point again, but then the point remains that the Shastras, if the Bhagavatam mentions that if Varnashram duties are performed without an offering to the Supreme, even though one may not have a complete or proper understanding of the Supreme, at least if some offering is not made to the Supreme, then that type of Varnashram is called as Asurik Varnashram, and the result is hell. And so therefore, if one wants to make spiritual progress, then it is very essential that there has to be some understanding of the Supreme, and the Varnashram duties are offered to the Supreme. So done for the pleasure of the Supreme, and then the fruits are offered to the Supreme. Of course, Prabhupada is talking about Krishna consciousness. Then as devotees, then one has a proper understanding of who is the Supreme, and then one is performing the activity, one is performing the duty, and so then that becomes Deva Varnashram. So Deva Varnashram means then one has a proper understanding of who is the Supreme, and one is offering the fruits of the activities and the activities themselves for the pleasure of the Supreme. And then for such devotees, as Prabhupada writes, Tesham aham samudartam mrityu samsara sagra. So then the Supreme Lord takes charge, and then that's how he makes progress, and then ultimately achieves the Supreme Lord. But then ultimately, the important point is that the work has to be performed for the satisfaction of the Supreme. Some offering to the Supreme has to be there. That's Vedic Varnashram. Vedic Varnashram, everyone may not have the proper understanding of who is the Supreme, but then at least there's some conception, whether Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, or maybe even indirect ways of worship through the demigods and so on. So, but then there's some conception of the Supreme and some offering to the Supreme. So that's Vedic Varnashram. Then that purifies the person, and then that's how he makes gradual elevation. That's the whole discussion of the yoga ladder, which we already had. And so that's how then gradually one makes progress, and ultimately one may achieve the Supreme Lord. 47. Shreyan swadharma vigunaha paradharmat swanushtithat swabhavaniyatam karma kurvanapnoti kilbisham. It is better to engage in one's own occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. Duties prescribed according to one's nature are never affected by sinful reactions. Okay, read the purport.
Achyut Arjun Sukha Prabhuji.
It is one's occupational duty is prescribed in the Bhagavad Gita. As already discussed in previous verses, the duties of a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra are prescribed according to their particular modes of nature. One should not imitate another's duty. A man who is by nature attracted to the kind of work done by Shudras should not artificially claim to be a Brahmana, although he may have been born into a Brahmana family. In this way, one should work according to his own nature. No work is abominable if performed in the service of the Supreme Lord. The occupational duty of a Brahmana is certainly in the mode of goodness, but if a person is not by nature in the mode of goodness, he should not imitate the occupational duty of a Brahmana. For a Kshatriya or administrator, there are so many abominable things. A Kshatriya has to be violent to kill his enemies, and sometimes a Kshatriya has to tell lies for the sake of diplomacy. Such violence and duplicity accompany political affairs, but a Kshatriya is not supposed to give up his occupational duty and try to perform the duties of a Brahmana. One should act to satisfy the Supreme Lord. For example, Arjuna was a Kshatriya. He was hesitating to fight the other party. But if such fighting is performed for the sake of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there need be no fear of degradation. In the business field also, sometimes a merchant has to tell so many lies to make a profit. If he does not do so, there can be no profit. Sometimes a merchant says, "Oh, my dear customer, for you, I'm making no profit." But one should know that without profit, the merchant cannot exist. Therefore, it should be taken as a simple lie if a merchant says that he's not making a profit. But the merchant should not think that because he is engaged in an occupation in which the telling of lies is compulsory, he should give up his profession and pursue the profession of a Brahmana. This is not recommended. Whether one is a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, a Shudra, doesn't matter. If he serves by his work the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even Brahmanas who perform different types of sacrifices sometimes must kill animals because sometimes animals are sacrificed in such ceremonies. Similarly, if a Kshatriya engaged in his occupation kills an enemy, there is no sin incurred. In the 3rd chapter, these matters have been clearly and elaborately explained. Every man should work for the purpose of yajna or for Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anything done for personal sense gratification is a cause of bondage. The conclusion is that everyone should be engaged according to the particular mode of nature he has acquired, and he should decide to work only to serve the supreme cause of the Supreme Lord.
Okay, we'll read one more verse and then we'll discuss. 48. Sahajam karma kaunteya sadosham api na tyajet sarvarambha hi doshena domenagnir imavritaha. Every endeavor is covered by some faults, just as fire is covered by smoke. Therefore, one should not give up the work born of his nature, O son of Kunti, even if such work is full of faults. Purport?
Vijay Narasimha Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhuji.
In conditioned life, all work is contaminated by the material modes of nature. Even if one is Brahmana, he has to perform sacrifices in which animal killing is necessary. Similarly, a Kshatriya, however pious he may be, has to fight enemies. He cannot avoid it. Similarly, a merchant, however pious he may be, must sometimes hide his profit to stay in business, or he may sometimes have to do business on the black market. These things are necessary. One cannot avoid them. Similarly, even though a man is a Shudra serving a bad master, he has to carry out the order of the master, even though it should not be done. Despite these flaws, one should continue to carry out his prescribed duties, for they are born out of his own nature. A very nice example is given here. Although fire is pure, still there is smoke. Yet smoke does not make the fire impure. Even though there is smoke in fire, fire is still considered to be the purest of all elements. If one prefers to give up the work of a Kshatriya and take up the occupation of a Brahmana, he is not assured that in the occupation of the Brahmana there is no unpleasant duties. One may then conclude that in the material world, no one can be completely free from the contamination of material nature. This example of fire and smoke is very appropriate in this connection. When in wintertime one takes a stone from the fire, sometimes the smoke disturbs the eyes and other parts of the body. But still, one must make use of the fire despite disturbing conditions. Similarly, one should not give up his natural occupation because there are some disturbing elements. Rather, one should be determined to serve Supreme Lord by his occupational duty in Krishna consciousness. That is the perfectional point. When a particular type of occupation is performed for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, all the defects in that particular occupation are purified. When the results of the work are purified, when connected with devotional service, one becomes perfect in seeing the self within, and that is self-realization.
Okay, so that's the important point towards the end of this purport. When a particular type of perfect occupation is performed for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, all the defects in that particular occupation are purified. So, as far as this discussion is concerned, here in the Bhagavad Gita, so the main purpose is Krishna is trying to inspire Arjuna to fight. That's the main thing. And so we know that Arjuna, he wants to give up the fighting as a Kshatriya, he wants to go begging as a Brahmana. And so therefore Krishna is trying to tell him, no, you have to perform your own duty. Why? We discussed these points before also, and much of it is a revision actually. But why? Because Krishna did tell him that because of the influence of the Rajogun, even if you abandon your fighting here on the battlefield, you go to the forest, you'll fight with someone else. Because the Rajogun will push him. So better than going somewhere else and fighting whimsically, you fight on my instruction, then you'll be purified. You won't get any reaction. That is the essence. Why Krishna is speaking all this. That's for Arjuna. Now in Vedic times, yes, all this makes good sense because that was the training right from childhood. So it said that mostly children of Brahmanas were trained like that. They had the qualities like that mostly. And so then they would also be Brahmanas. Similarly applies for Kshatriyas. So then in Vedic times, everything was all very systematic. And so even though in every occupation there is some fault, as Srila Prabhupada is beautifully explaining, the Brahmanas have the fault of sacrificing animals, and the Kshatriyas have the fault of killing other people, and the Vaishyas have the fault of cheating, and the Shudras have the fault of serving the wrong master sometimes. So every occupation has some faults. But because that occupation is according to his nature, so the whole principle, that's why we clarified the principle right in the beginning. So the principle is that yes, you have a particular nature, engage that nature for the Supreme and get purified and get elevated. That is the principle. So therefore, if somebody has a particular nature, it should be engaged. That's the essential principle. And so therefore, even though it appears as if there's some fault, but then everything has a fault. Nothing is free from fault. In the material world, everything has some fault. But then, as we just read, but then by doing that work for the satisfaction of the Supreme, one gets purified of those faults, and that's how one gets elevated. Now, to talk of present-day context, as Prabhupada said it again many times, everything is a mess. It's all topsy-turvy. Nobody knows who's Brahmana, nobody knows who's Kshatriya. As Prabhupada said, Brahmanas and Kshatriyas are actually missing from the society. Mostly some Vaishyas, mostly Shudras. That's modern day. But still, that is on the basis of birth, or on the basis of guna and karma, sorry. On the basis of guna and karma. On the basis of birth, everyone is Shudra. On the basis of guna and karma, also Vaishyas, Shudras. But then, of course, we do find there are some intellectuals, some who have that intellectual capacity. There are some who have some administrative capacity. And so, of course, it's very difficult in the present age. It's so much mixed up, so much messed up. So therefore, it's very difficult. And therefore, we find sometimes in our temples also that spiritual authorities have quite a tough time trying to figure out what is a person's nature, how to engage him. And so mostly what happens is a trial and error method. So then, okay, engage someone in this service. If it fits here, let him continue. If it doesn't, then change, and things like that. So, of course, so therefore the practical application as far as we are concerned is, so therefore whatever instructions spiritual authorities give, whatever service is allotted, then yes, just be satisfied in that service and continue. And so the practical application for us is don't compare. So sometimes we find the pujaris are thinking, oh, the preachers are very fortunate. They go out and they travel and meet so many people and they get a lot of honor. We are all the time in the temple. And the preachers are thinking, oh, these pujaris are very nice. They simply have to stay in the temple and eat all the Mahaprasad, and so it's good for them. So usually we find there's this competitive tendencies, and people tend to be competitive or envious and things like that. These problems do take place. But then, so therefore, the best thing is, okay, leave it to the spiritual authorities, let them figure out. And of course, if I have a particular nature, I can express to my authorities, not very wrong. But then leave it to them, and whatever service is given to one, try to do it to the best of one's ability and get purified. So that's the practical application in present day society. That's about it. There's nothing more that can be done in present day society because it's so difficult to understand what is one's nature. So therefore, we just continue in whatever service allowed to do us, and of course, do it at least in the mode of goodness as we have been discussing, and then offer the results to the Supreme. That's how one can get purified. Okay, let's see a few quotes from Srila Prabhupada. Okay, fine. This is lecture. Okay, fine. Somebody read this, please.
Hariharan Prabhuji.
Everyone should think that he is engaged in a particular type of occupation by Rishikesha, the master of senses, and by the result of work in which one is engaged, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, should be worshipped. If one thinks always in this way, in full Krishna consciousness, then by the grace of the Lord, he becomes fully aware of everything. That is the perfection of life. The Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 12.7, Tesham aham samudhrata. The Supreme Lord himself takes charge of delivering such a devotee. That is the highest perfection of life. In whatever occupation one may be engaged, if he serves the Supreme Lord, he will achieve the, I'm not able to see the last line in my...
This is the highest perfection. I think so. This is from the purport anyways. Okay, this is Prabhupada's lecture. Okay, read this.
So therefore, this samodhamaha can be practiced provided you agree to execute tapasya. Therefore, in this Krishna consciousness movement, we are training these boys. Anyone, it doesn't matter what he is. No illicit sex, no intoxication, no meat eating, no gambling. This is tapasya. Those who are practiced to these bad habits, for them it will be very difficult, very difficult. One of our god brother went to preach in London, and Lord Zetland, he was talking with him, and he said, Goswamiji, can you make me a Brahmana? So he said, yes, why not? You give up these 4 bad habits. And he said, it is impossible for us. He said clearly, it is impossible. This is our life. But at the present moment, these boys, hundreds and thousands of boys, they are giving up this practice.
This is called tapasya. Yes, so this is tapasya, following all these rules and regulations. Okay, another lecture, somebody else read.
Anup Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Not construct big house. He simply constructs his character.
Little louder, please.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Now am I audible?
Yes.
Not construct big house. He simply constructs his character. So those who are after money, material things, we have to induce them that spend for me, that's all, and let him earn. So far we are concerned, we shall live very simple life, simply in Krishna consciousness. That is Brahmana. Brahmana does not go to construct big house. He simply constructs his character. And the other Kshatriyas and Vaishyas, they offer him, please come here and sit down. Therefore, the division is, one who is unable to become a Brahmana, let him become a Kshatriya. If he cannot become a Kshatriya, let him become a Vaishya. Otherwise, let him remain a Kshudra. But there should be ideal class. So we are trying to create an ideal society of Brahmanas. Then people will be benefited.
Okay, so yes, so therefore the main business of the brahmanas is character. So not after material things, big house. So the main thing for a brahmana especially is to have exemplary character and qualities by which he can lead the other people. Because the brahmana is said to be the brain. So he's supposed to lead all the others. So therefore, if he doesn't have a good character, then the rest of the society will be in chaos. And that's what's happening these days. So just like Prabhupada said, the body, sometimes somebody can be without a hand or a leg, but if the head only is missing, then where is the question of body? But then that's the situation of modern day society. No brahmanas. And so therefore nobody to lead. And so therefore everything is in chaos. So therefore Prabhupada emphasized on trying to create brahmanas first. Then everything else will fall into place. Okay, somebody else read? Another
Nathan Prabhuji. Malti Mataji or Nathan Prabhuji. Okay. Karthik Prabhuji. Karthik S. Prabhuji. Okay. Kotishashi Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji, please go.
Not that I sit down in my armchair and I give direction. The pole soldiers are fighting. No, he should go. Courage. He should personally give direction. Do like this. Who is doing that? The Minister of Defense is very comfortably sitting on his chair and the poor soldiers are fighting. That is not required. He must go first of all. Do like this. Just like in Battle of Kurukshetra, Arjuna is in front. The other side, Duryodhana. The real fighters, they are face to face. Soldiers are assistant. Where is that? So they should be trained up. So unless he is by his nature very powerful, Sauryam, therefore Kshatriyas are allowed to hunt to become hero. Facing the tiger, come on, and still say about 25 years ago, there were a native prince in Jaipur. Every year he would go to the forest and face the tiger without any weapon. So that is required.
Okay, so we discussed on this point about Shauryam for the Kshatriyas, not simply sitting in their chambers. Okay, another lecture. Please read this.
Aishwarya Mataji.
Make your society everything according to the instruction of Gita, so as to maintain this body nicely. You must everything in order. The head, brain must be in order. The hand, arms must be in order. The belly must be digesting food and getting energy, and leg also must walk. Similarly, seve karmanye abhirata. Never mind you are a Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. If your aim is to keep the body in order, then either you become Brahmana, either you become Kshatriya or Shudra. Everything is in order. That is required. Unless these instructions are followed as given by Krishna, he comes. Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati. He comes there. He leaves this instruction. If you take advantage of this instruction and make your society, family, or government everything according to the instruction of Bhagavad Gita, then everything is perfect.
Yes. So all are important, as Prabhupada said. The head is also important, the legs are also important. So just like in a body, so similar in society, everyone is required. So if everyone is simply a Brahmana, everyone is simply doctor or engineer, it doesn't work. Everyone has to be there. But in order to lead the society, the Brahmanas have to be there. So that's why Prabhupada gave that special emphasis on Brahmanas, who are absolutely missing in the modern day society. Okay, okay, fine. We already read this is from the purport. Okay, fine. So that's the end of this section. So our time is up for today. So maybe you can keep the questions for tomorrow. So we'll take questions first and then continue.
Yes. Okay, Prabhuji.
All right.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Fine. Can we stop?
Yes, Prabhuji, you can stop. Harikshit Prabhuji was saying something?
Like we just thought of announcing that this one, right?
The shloka test?
Shloka test and deadline.
Yes. So shloka test, as we announced earlier, devotees can contact Kartikeya Prabhuji or Harikshit Prabhuji, and then you can schedule a video call and then give it to them. And we'll keep the deadline same as the open book exam deadline, which is next the Sunday after the coming Sunday, 21st of June. So by that time, please wrap it up.
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Prabhuji.
How are you planning to do the shloka test?
Shloka test is Prabhuji online by video, through a video call with either Harikshit Prabhuji or Kartikeya Prabhuji.
So it's good you have a lot of trust on them.
We don't have any other option, Prabhuji, other than just waiting it out otherwise.
No, the other option is to wait.
Okay.
The other option is to wait.
Okay.
So I'm a little doubtful of this option.
Okay. Then in that case, Prabhuji, if you suggest, then we'll wait, Prabhuji.
Or otherwise, it is one by one, it is coming. So we can invite devotees to IBC and they can come to the center and give also.
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, so we will do like that too.
So no online then?
Yeah, no online.
Okay. I've just received a good suggestion. Maybe close eyes and video call and then. Okay.
These days we can't trust all these things.
Okay. All right, Ruji. So we'll keep it that way. So no online then. So we won't put a deadline in that case. Harikshit Ruji, what do you recommend?
No, we can put the deadline. So otherwise it will keep going on. And so those who are there in town, so they all can come and give within 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, what I suggest is that you keep you can make a sort of schedule with maybe a fixed number of students at a certain fixed time when they can come and then recite the shlokas.
Yes, Prabhuji. We will do that, Prabhuji.
Yeah, so maybe you can, maybe tell them to volunteer for, maybe if you tell them the days and timings, then they can volunteer and give their names.
Okay, Prabhuji.
All right.
All right, Prabhuji.
Okay, fine. Thank you all very much.
Yeah, the open book exam, open book test like this. We have one question. Do we have any other question also for that?
Okay, what's the other question? I think so. The second question. If you have somebody has the handbook ready, you can read the second question. What's the second?
Yes, Prabhuji, I have.
I'll read the second question.
From Prabhupada's purport to chapters 14 and 16 of Bhagavad Gita that reflect aspects of his mission and discuss in your own words the significance of these aspects for ISKCON's future.
Yes, that's right. Okay, that question is good. Yes. So that second question also can be written.
Fine, Prabhuji.
All right.
Yes,
okay, fine. Okay. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
The scene.